Today we're going to be talking about Codex Alimentarius. Over the last few days, as you know, we've been talking a little bit about the Agricultural Action Group. We've had a couple of meetings here in Taupo, one in Mangakino on Tuesday evening and one in Taupo Township at Raw Balance Cafe yesterday at 10. And it's when you're talking about one area of our lives that are really starting to be controlled quite severely from the top down, it all connects. You can't really, it's very hard to tease things apart. So, of course, when we're talking about agriculture and the freedoms that our farmers should have, we can't separate them from we as urban consumers, because whatever problems they have gets passed on to us, whether it's shortages or whether it's rising prices due to the regulations that are placed on them and the consent fees to have those regulations audited, sometimes yearly, sometimes every second year, sometimes every 10 years. So Codex Alimentarius came up in our conversation, and it is a pretty important subject to be aware of. And so that's what we're going to talk to today. I mean, I thought, my goodness, Codex Alimentarius, is this some kind of film procedure, development procedure, or is it aperture for a camera? What is this? Or is it a name of a transformer? You know, the children's Transformers that were very popular about 10 years ago. And no, it's not. It's got to do with total control of our food by the United Nations. But one thing it does have in common with Transformers is that it's more than meets the eye. You know, that song Transformers, more than meets the eye. Well, Codex Alimentarius is exactly the same. I just want to run through a little bit about how it began and who it all is. So in my book, We Are Revolting, I do talk a little bit about Codex Alimentarius as part of the nutrition, or the lack of nutrition, our toxic foods contain today, and their part in that. But just stepping back, where did it come from and what is the history of it? And of course, it takes us back to Germany, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire at that time, sort of the seat of the Roman Empire. Everything seems to go back to that. You know, there was a book written, All Roads Lead to Rome, and sure enough, even Codex Alimentarius does as well. But I digress. We're going to talk a little bit about a man called Fritz Termeer. Now, he died in the 1960s, 1967, and he was put on trial during the Nuremberg trials. Prior and during World War II, he was on the board for IG Farben, and this company produced the gas that was used in the gas chambers in the concentration camps to kill, murder Jews, gypsies, anyone they deemed inferior or a real useless eater to the new regime. They also produced the steel for the railways to the death camps, and they also produced fluoride. They put fluoride in the concentration camp water to keep the inmates compliant. We don't want anyone rising up and querying anything or having the wherewithal to put cognitive thoughts together to, rush the guards or really cause havoc. So fluoride in the water. Now, so he went on trial during the Nuremberg trials, and he was convicted for crimes against humanity. So he was given 7 years imprisonment. but he got out a few years earlier. He only did 3 years because Nelson Rockefeller needed his man. And so he was taken out of the concentration camp, and then he went basically back to his post, not with IG Farben, but a subsidiary company. And it was this company that then later on bought Monsanto. But he is responsible for why we today have fluoride in our water. Dumb us down, make us compliant, particularly the big cities. You know, you look at where all the trendy lefties are that believe everything the government tells us. Check what's in the water, fluoride. Anyway, he went on to the board of Bayer, and if you look at Bayer's symbol, it's nice Luciferian symbol in its circle, and he was put to work there. So Rockefeller, Mayor, and United Nations, that lovely governance that we all love, put their heads together and thought, okay, we can't do it this way. So how can we control the people and help our depopulation agenda in a more nefarious but covert way? And they decided to drag back from history, from the Austro-Hungarian empire that collapsed in World War I, I think it was, to get what they had going in that country was the Codex Alimentarius. So Codex, you know, kind of a written code, and, you know, elementary laws and regulations and standards for that country to make sure that they understood the food requirements. And we know the Germans and the Austrians just were, still are. They're very precisioned people, and they write everything. Everything's got to be, you know, the ABCs, you know, paint by numbers. So that's where it came from. And so when FAIR and United Nations and the Rockefellers started to put together this code, the standard for food. And this locked very carefully into the World Trade Organization, because how can we have fair trade in food if we don't have standards? So that locks in tightly to there. And also the WHO, the World Health Organization, are right in bed with that as well. They're taking the big initiative there. When you look at all the Codex Alimentarius documentation we see today, you'll see United Nations University. Who would have thought they had a university? WHO and the FAO, the Food Agricultural Organization. So they are really the tight fit CEO organizations, as it were, the United Nations NGO organizations that are controlling all the food across the globe. And they say it's voluntary, of course. Oh my goodness, voluntary. It's a bit like the vaccinations we're threatened with. Oh, it'll be voluntary, but you won't be able to work or go to the doctor or a hospital or supermarkets, but it's voluntary. And this is the way it works. It's voluntary, but if that country has a dispute, a trade dispute, and they're not signed up members of the Codex Alimentarius Commission, it doesn't matter if they have got a case that is right, they lose the case, because if you're not a member, you lose the case. And this, I've got a few notes here because, you know, like anything that the United Nations and the elites do, it is just so tangled and such a mess. You would be researching it for a year just to try and get a feel for it all. But this is something important here. Okay, I'm going to jump over my. I was going to keep my notes and go with my notes, but I'm jumping all over the place. So I will just jump here. So the World Trade Organization, you know, that is international trade. So that comes under international law. So we as sovereign individuals or free people on the land. Not everyone likes that sovereign individual or sovereign label on themselves because they say only God is sovereign. So there's another way of saying that, free people on the land. But when I use sovereign, you know what I mean. It's a word that we all kind of associate with us as people that come under common law or the law of the land or the law of God. So under common law, we are inherently free. And so if something is not forbidden, it is permitted. Now I have here my little show and tell item today. I got during our meetings, saffron growers met some, we've known them for a little while now, and they gave me a little container here of saffron that they grow. Now, we know saffron isn't forbidden, so it's permitted. We can eat it. But Codex Alimentarius Commission says, and this is the international law, remember, it says what is not permitted is forbidden. And they're saying that this saffron, if it hasn't gone through their regulations, is not permitted. So it's forbidden. So under common law, this is not forbidden and we can eat it. It's a nutrient, it's a food, we can eat it. Under international law, which is Codex Alimentarius, they say that this is not permitted. It hasn't been graded and you haven't paid exorbitant amounts of money to be audited each year. It could have salmonella. It could have all sorts of nasty diseases. So this is not permitted. So therefore, for us, it is forbidden. And this is the way it's going to go forward as they control our food supply. And New Zealand is a founding member of the Codex Alimentarius Commission right at the beginning. I jumped online this morning and got onto our website, our government websites, and the PDFs and all the information. So you do that afterwards as well. We're just so entrenched. So it's not mandatory, remember, it's voluntary. But if we have a government that says, no, we're locked in, well, what does that do for us? It means we're locked in. Now, another very interesting thing with Codex Alimentarius, because here we go. Let me just see. They control everything. Let me just step back. Where am I? Okay, I've done all that. Good. Oh, I'm okay. I'm going to come over here. I've got a few documents and things here. So let me just say that Codex Alimentarius Commission, remember that WHO and Food Agriculture Organization under the UN Hospice control it all. There's 188 member countries around the world that have signed in. It's not compulsory, but don't think there's any going to be fair trade for you if you don't join it. It's got one organization, which is the European Union. It's got 237 Codex observers. So they've got to check it all out. This is crazy high in bureaucracy. Crazy amounts of money are being spent to keep all this together. Your taxes and my taxes. So with our lockdowns and many businesses folding, don't expect any help from the government because our money are going to Codex Alimentarius and to the UN and to the Clinton Foundation and to the Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation. Oh, it's all going there because they love us and they look after us. It's so kind. Anyway, 58 international, intergovernmental organizations. So we think we're a sovereign nation. They just haven't told us, actually, you're already globalized, New Zealand. You're gone. They just don't want us to know that yet because we might get rise up. We don't want to do that. We want to keep the people down. Also 163 NGOs. So that is the United Nations.
Oh, yeah, okay, right, that's fine.
You could, yep. Do you want to take it out, Reese? Excuse me, phone. NGOs, a United Nations construct to have non-governmental organizations running all over us, 163 of those. And then, of course, 16 United Nations organizations. Codex Alimentarius has over 8,000 standards and conditions and regulations. So you can imagine the army of people needed and the committees that put all this together, and then it goes to the commission to be ratified. So they do everything. They have got standards on unprocessed food and semi-processed food and processed food and labeling. And the couple that have this company here in Topol Electorate, they get their saffron farm audited, and they didn't put the amount of grams that this one has on the front. They had their amount of grams on the back label, but they were picked up for that. You haven't got it on the front. So, just crazy, crippling regulations that are totally controlling everything people do. And remember, international law, what the captain says, or that's Admiralty law, law of the sea, what the captain says goes. And if the captain changes his mind, which he does every 5 minutes, you're always having to play catch up as a business or a company. Under common law, if there's no one injured, no one murdered, and no vandalization of business or of property, then there's no crime. So we know from the minute we're born to the minute we die that this is a crime and this is not a crime. Nothing changes. With international law, which is the United Nations and Codex Alimentarius, it shifts all the time as their committees nut through what they're going to do, and then get the commission to ratify it, and then down into the countries. So they labeling, hygiene, additives, pesticides, imports, exports, certification, contaminants, and it's all risk assessed. Okay, so they have their standards, the codes of practice, guidelines, recommendations, and it goes on and on and on from farm to fork, totally sorted. So, and I think the biggest area where Codex Alimentarius has majorly stepped over the line is when it comes to our vitamins and minerals, our nutrients, which of course we should be able to have whenever we want. But Codex Alimentarius has decided, because they got their fingers big time into pharmaceuticals, so they don't want you well. So what they've decided with our nutrients is that they're toxins. They've relabeled, like they relabel everything, that they've relabeled back at the beginning of the 1900s, oil as a fossil fuel, let's call it a fossil fuel. It's not, but that's what they call it. Anyway, so Codex Alimentarius has decided that our vitamins and our minerals are toxins, and they've got to look after you and they've got to look after me. Goodness, we might overeat something and die. That would be shocking. So what they do is they test, well, they are now testing vitamins on animals. And they'll tank these animals up with the highest vitamins until that animal is, very ill. So then they know, okay, that's the top that we can give an animal. They kind of equate that over to humans. Then they do it the other way. They say, okay, now we'll feed these animals a little bit of vitamins, a little bit more until we see a noticeable change. But that change could be for good, of course, because now that the animal's more robust, their nutrients are going well, because we know that the kind of chemistry of our body, it's nutrients working together, so it can be quite complex. So they get to that point. So now what they're doing for you and me, you used to be able to buy your vitamins, and you'd get some really great zinc or really great vitamin D or vitamin C or vitamin A. So now they work out the minimum amount of vitamins and minerals that will do us good. Then they divide that by 100. So that means instead of maybe taking 100 grams of something a day to keep whatever balanced, you're now only allowed one. Well, you can have as many as you want, but it'll only be 1 gram of that nutrient per tablet. So you'll be paying a lot of money for tablets that are absolutely rubbish. And if you want to get any value out of that, you'd actually probably have to take the whole bottle in one hit. So this is not Codex Alimentarius, WHO, United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization has got nothing to do with your well-being and my well-being. It's total control. This is about globalization. This is about total control. And like Alana Johnson, who came out of Romania, went to America, and she said, when they clamped down there, that they were all starving, but we were equal. We were all hungry, we're all skinny, but we were equal. And this is what it's all about. This is all part of United Nations goal keeping, their sustainability and equity. And when you find some of these Codex Alimentarius documentations, they're cheeky enough to put the goals in. This is goal, it's achieving this goal and this goal and this goal. So they're just blatant the way they are producing it there for us. Okay, so I'm at 20 minutes now talking to you. Oh, I just wanted to show you this. So that might be something worth going online and getting. There's lots on the New Zealand government websites. So this is the New Zealand Strategic Objectives in Codex for 2015 to 2020. So this is why we will struggle now to get raw milk. This is why we will struggle to get nutrients in a tablet form that of any value whatsoever. This is why our saffron farmer has to be graded before they can sell this. And this is why we very soon, if we're not careful, will not be able to have our own vegetable gardens in our own back garden. Apparently, the government tried to bring that in a few years ago, and there was the Greens, oddly enough, thankfully, said this is atrocious, you can't. They will try and come around and do that to us again, because it's for our safety. It's food security. And remember, we're going into a Maunder minimum. Things will change. We know there's already food shortages coming down the pipeline. And so it's all about us being equal, hungry and skinny, but equity, being equal. And just to finish with, this document, it tells us about a few things. I'm just going to read a few things. New Zealand's long-term prosperity and well-being depend on sustained growth and access to international markets. Well, that's a load of porkies. That is totally not true. Access to international markets for our food and agricultural products. We are a beautiful country, so totally self-sufficient, and we do not need to rely on exports and imports. It's nice to do that trade, but the reason our government is saying that is because they're signed into Codex Alimentarius and they're signed into the World Trade Organization, and if they don't sign in and stay to these regulations, they won't be able to do all the things they want to do with the World Trade Organization. Follow the money. This is total corruption. We've been farmed for our money. It's all going to nefarious, fat cat run fraudulent businesses and commissions. Here's another one. The work of Codex Alimentarius Commission is critical, says our government, to promoting international harmonization. And as someone I was listening to recently, a doctor who's fighting this in America, said, listen to that, harmonization, nice globalist word, but what does it start with? Harm. And that's the thing with elites. They do a lot of word trickery. They use words very carefully and on purpose. And reduce technical barriers to trade. What would those technical barriers be? If you're not part of Codex Alimentarius, you won't get a fair trade. So it's all tied up. It all sounds great, but it's just to tangle us. Further down, New Zealand has successfully promoted the development of key food safety and related standards of major economic significance to primary sector, and they're all over our farms, crushing them left, right, and centre. And it's host government for Codex committees on meat hygiene and milk products. They're coming for us. Another one, engage with industry, consumer, and other stakeholders. That's nice United Nations globalist talk. Is critical to promoting their involvement and contribution and underpinning New Zealand's highly regarded position in Codex. This is not about you and me, remember. This is about our big fat cats, political establishment wanting to be voted in again, wanting to pay to play with the big fat cats overseas. It's a business. We're a corporation. We're being pumped dry. Here's another one. A clear, well-articulated strategy is essential to guide our participation in Codex and ensure that we advance our objectives in an efficient, systematic and cost-effective manner. That's what our government says. So we've got about 15 Codex committees running over 2020 and into 2021, and they'll be working out all sorts of little loopholes that they need to fill. Once they get that sorted, it goes to the Codex Commission and they ratify it. Our government says, yeah, we agree with that. And the only loser here is you and me, because we won't be able to go to our friendly farmer and say, hey, could I buy some saffron at your gate? No, you can't, because it's got to go through the Codex food risk assessment, and it needs to be valued, have that evaluation. So what can we do? It is tricky. Leading up to the elections, I just said vote them out, but we're stuck with them for another 3 years if we get a fair deal. I think the last ones was rigged. You know about the Dominion voting system. So we are, it was rigged. I'm hoping that Sydney Powell will stay healthy and well, get America through their fraudulent elections, and maybe expose us so we can perhaps go to early elections next year in our country of New Zealand. But the other thing is Wakaputanga, which is our independence. I did a little bit of a live on that, Facebook Live on that last Friday. Māori and Pakeha and anyone that could contribute and be part of the discussion wrote the Waitangi last weekend. They have now sent out letters to many countries around the world, just reiterating New Zealand is independent. We were given that independence by William IV. Now, for me, seeing the battle from common law, Wakaputanga, to international law, our political fraudulent swamp dwellers down in Wellington, it's like oil and water. It doesn't really mix very well. And the only way I can see that we can get our independence is if we spread the word and more people understand Wakaputanga, so that we can understand it clearly, have confidence in it. And really, I think we just need to do people power down in Wellington and just walk into Parliament building, into the Beehive there, and just say, we're here, boys. We're taking up that mantle that was given sovereignly to us with a 13-gun salute off Mahia Peninsula, and we will take over. And we will be able to put our government back into, or have a government system back into the people's hands. I can't see any other way. The swamp will not let us go. They will not let us go. And this is the decade that we need to fight if we want to be free at the end of it for our children and our children's children. So I'm going to leave it there. It's another really important part of that Agenda 21. This is what Codex Alimentarius is. It's a part of the Agenda 21. And as you know, I'm writing a book on that at the moment. It's massive. I'm wanting to get a bit of break over the Christmas New Year period so I can really get back into it. I'm getting on with it, but it's just finding those large pieces of time. I need a day, 2 days, just concentrating it and getting it all together. So that's what I'm going to be doing. But we need to be spreading the word that we actually, as my t-shirt says again today, I do not consent. We need to verbalize that. If we don't say that under the international law, that means we do consent. In the law dictionary, the International Law of the Sea, Admiralty Law, if we do not speak with our voice, it means we consent. So we have to rise up. Share this live. If it bounces back, throw it through Messenger. Let's Wakaputanga, let's get that out. Get on YouTube and listen to Dan Hermanson's interview. It's just very clear. Listen to it 2 or 3 times so you really get the nuances, what he's saying, and really get to understand that. We have a chance here, and this is our moment, but we need to be doing it. And don't think, oh, I haven't got the energy, I haven't got the time. You do the little that you can. You remember, a pride of lions can be taken down by a swarm of flies. They just bite, 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 and they can kill a whole pride of lions. Well, these lions are roaring around, seeing who they can devour. But I tell you, the elites, they've got no teeth. They've got no clothes, like, the emperor's wearing no clothes. The only reason they're about their nefarious business is because we haven't stood up and said no. So it's time. And we will see that they will flee. There's only a few thousand of them. We'll find out where they live. We can get up to their front gate and look them in the eye as well. So it's our chance. So it's not a big thing, but we just need to find that stamina just to do the little things that we can ourselves, and join with networks, join with people that also understand, who are awake and are prepared to do their little as well. Just discussion and sharing information amongst us, which is what I wanted to bring today with the Codex Alimentarius. Just have a little potter around. There was a very good article by Ian R. Crane out of the UK. Google him on Codex Alimentarius. I'll get it and I'll put it on after this, actually. His guy was following when I was in Britain. The time zone's not facilitating that quite so much for me now. Anyway, I'm going to let you go. Thank you again for joining me today. I really enjoy your company. And I'll see you tomorrow. You have a good day now. Bye.